Hey guys, so the thumbnail to this video isn't clickbait. You're literally not breathing air right now. That's not air you're breathing. Like you're breathing in source or God or whatever name you feel comfortable using. Now before you decide that I'm full of it, just just hear me out on this, guys. What if we're literally like fish in the ocean looking for water, but most of the fish can't detect the water because it's everywhere? We're like those fish talking about, where is it? I can't see it. Is there even any such thing as water? Like, that's us with source. But the reality is, source is actually so close to us and so omnipresent and all encompassing that we're swimming in source right now. Like, we think the space in this room is empty or at best made of something we call air, but we're no different from fish swimming around an ocean looking for water. But we can't find the water because it's everywhere and it can't be separated from the space that we're moving around in. We actually don't exist as independent beings that are separated from source. And like I said, the space in the room you're sitting in isn't empty at all, by the way. Really, it's not empty or full, but for the sake of this conversation, we'll say it's not empty. Now, our paradigm says it's full of air, but we don't know what air is. And I know a lot of people will say, yes, we do. It's this thing called oxygen and some other things called molecules. Okay, but what are molecules then? Well, they're made out of atoms. Everyone knows that. Okay, but no one knows what atoms are. No one can say what an atom is. Even the best scientists in the world, the most they can do is come up with more words to describe more words. No one can say what these quantum strings are. At one point they were saying it was made up of just empty space. Well, what I'm saying is space, it's not empty, it's full of source or God. And just because we use words like quantum or, insert whatever scientific term here that you want, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's all just words. Assigning a noise that I've made with my mouth to something and being able to describe or predict its properties, that doesn't mean we're actually defining what it actually is, what anything actually is. So no, I don't think the mouth sound we call air actually says anything about what it is we're breathing in. All we can say from our direct experience is that if we don't inhale this clear invisible substance, if you want to call it a substance, if we don't take this substance into our body constantly, then the body dies pretty quickly. I mean, what if we're wrong? What if there was more to this air substance than we were being told by our scientists and other authority figures? Like, just for the rest of this video, just if you can, let's set our conditioning aside and look at things like a child would, like with a totally open mind and like genuine curiosity. Just hear me out on this. The space around us that we call quote unquote air is actually an aspect of source. That's why we die without breathing it. We can't even last a few minutes without it. What if the breath you're breathing in right now is actually a part of source that enters your body and makes it alive? That is the case. Like, at least, I mean, they can't hide from us the fact that it's making us alive. They just took away like the God part of it. But I don't know, it's just our current paradigm. Like, our current paradigm has totally erased the whole idea that it's actually source, or at least a part of source. No, it's molecules. My science book says it's molecules and stuff. Again, more words that don't actually define or explain anything. Like, what is this? I breathe this stuff in and it makes me alive, not just for a little while, but for years, for my whole life. Without it, I don't have a life. Source has been with us our whole life. Even when we felt totally alone, we were never alone. That was the lie we were told. This breath is actually an aspect of God's life force. And we're just talking on a physical level right now, but there's an even deeper level to this life force that transcends the body, because the essence of what we are isn't actually a physical body, right? We're consciousness. But even when we try to explain how the so-called physical world works, even then the whole life force thing gets communicated. And the body is just one of countless things that's pointing to the presence of source. And I'm going to put up some music exercises at the end of this video too, to show you what I mean. But before I do, I just want you guys to try this with me. And I know some people might roll their eyes and be like, really? I'm not going to do this experiment with you. But for those people, like, just humor me on this. There's a reason why I'm doing this. I just want to prove a point to anyone out there thinking they exist independent of source. Try this. Take a deep breath and hold it. And I'll do this too. Just hold it for as long as you can and don't breathe, starting now. Okay. Oh, I went for way longer than I thought I could. Lord, I feel lightheaded. I know that was a cheesy experiment, but I rest my case. I tried to. I couldn't control it. You couldn't stop yourself from breathing in source life force. You couldn't do it even if you wanted to. No one can. We're not in control. We couldn't make this independent me that we think we are stop breathing for more than a few seconds. We are not the one in control. We're just not. That urge that you felt to breathe wasn't coming from the me. This independent me that exists separately from source is actually a kind of illusion in a way. That's why in Nonduality they say there is no me. There's only indescribable, infinite life or source. Life, lifing life. And Nonduality talks about how what this is actually too simple for the mind to grasp. That's why it places so much emphasis on experiential knowledge that transcends thinking and knowing, what we refer to as knowing, but the kind of knowing we don't know anything. But I have to use words to communicate. So you could say life is lifing life. through what we call bodies. But really what our breath is God's breathing. You think you're breathing in and out, but there's only God's breath. And even that isn't a fully accurate explanation of what's happening. It actually can't be put into words because it's too free to be limited by human language. The most language can do is try to point to that. So, one way we could think of it is that we function as life within an omnipotent relationship where we're inhaling God's breath every time we breathe in, and every time we breathe out, Source breathes us in. But really, there is no relationship. There's just this. Because there would have to be two separate things in order for there to be a relationship between the two. But there's just what is. Breathing is happening, but there's no separate entity that's breathing independently, even if someone is addicted to the belief that there's a separate me that's in control. I mean, the me has its place. Without it, we wouldn't be able to function in this dualistic world, but it's not in control. I want you guys to listen to this short clip. I do want to give a quick disclaimer though. It's going to be triggering for anyone who sees themselves as something that's independent from Source. But even when we feel separated from Source, we really aren't. We could never be fully separated from Source, even if we wanted to. The most someone could do, and this actually happens all the time, but the most someone could do is just be blind to Source present and live in the delusion of separation. But anyways, if it scares you to not be in control, then you may feel triggered by this clip. And I'll put a link to the full video in the description below.
And the me is all about wanting to control. What am I if I can't control anything? I'm frustrated. I want something else. I want something better because I believe, I have hope. You see, I have hope. I can hope for something better than this, but this is it. This is the dream right now. This is what's happening. We can call it life. We can call it a dream. It doesn't matter the word. No word is right. No word is wrong. They're just words. And so the me lives in a world of words called my story. And the me is constantly looking to make its story better. And that's the illusion. You don't have a story. You don't have anything. And it's very obvious when you think about the body, the human body, the cells in your body repairing themselves, moving, your eyes blinking, the heart beating, the lungs pumping air. It's the same movement that's moving the clouds or the wind, making the sun shine, bringing rain. All of it is life. So it's not me, it's not you doing anything. We're being done. You could say, like a tree. A tree isn't doing itself. So if there is freedom, that's the freedom.
What's obvious to me is that I do have control. And that's what I'm doing all day long. That's what me is. All day long I'm running to control, because it does seem like I have a good bit of control over a lot of things. That's why I've lived my whole life with this. And knowing, of course, is my tool. The more I know, the more control I have, the more ability I have. So it really isn't obvious to the me. And it certainly isn't effortless, because this is also always effort to control and to use my knowledge and to get more knowledge all the time. So that can be a little bit tricky, but to see what you're pointing to. But the thing about it is that I can notice maybe that as much control as I have and as much knowledge as I have, of course, I never have enough of either of those things. And the more control I have, I use it to get more control. And the same with knowledge. It's just an endless activity, because whatever it is I'm trying to do at any point is never the thing. However much control I have, however successful I seem to be or not, or however much I have good knowledge working for me, it never gets to the thing that I never get satisfied. I never get that sense of things being okay, which is what is really behind everything. Getting up in the morning, there's the drive to really have things be okay. And so the thing about it is that the control and the knowledge, which again, that's the motor that the me is running on all the time, it really doesn't do any good, even though it seems like it's working. Because, well, here's the punchline: what I'm really about, what I really want, which is the fulfillment, the completion, the wholeness, whatever word you want to put on it. That isn't something that I can control or know. It's not available to control or knowing. I could have superhuman control and superhuman knowing, 10 times more than any human ever has, and it's not going to do me any good. So the thing is, none of the control and none of the knowing, which is what all the me is about, control and knowing, that's what it is. And it turns out it has nothing to do with anything. It's really useless, because what I want is really only what is just already here. That's the completeness, that's the wholeness, that's the lack of separation. And that's the game of control is all about getting to that thing, and it can't be gotten because it's already here.
So what you really want is already here. Source is already here. There is no separation already. There never has been. That's how I know it's not just dead air that we're breathing. That's how it's possible to hear the source code in the music. The retrocausality language has been there our whole lives too, whether we were able to pick up on it or not. And I don't want to get too deep into explaining what the retrocausality language is, just because I don't want this video to be too long, and I've already gone over it several times in other videos. But basically, you could think of it as source code in the form of an archetypal language that's not of this world. It comes from a timeless realm, or like a timeless dimension. You could call it like a universal consciousness, but it's beyond anything we've been taught through the mainstream. But basically, it's transcended what we call linear time. And I'll put a link in the description to some videos that kind of go into more detail about the retrocausality language. And I believe Terence McKenna called it the transcendental object at the end of time. But you can pick up on a lot of it in music and movies. Personally, I think it's always fully understood by the subconscious mind all day, every day. which I think is actually the part of our mind that isn't under the illusion of being separated from source. The fact that the conscious mind has been cut off from accessing the subconscious mind says a lot about the state of this world. But yeah, I really think 99.9% of artists and writers aren't even consciously aware that they're being used as an instrument for this source code to come through. But I want to show you guys some of the retrocausality language transmissions I got from these 3 songs. Then I'm going to go ahead and play them at the end of this video so you guys can hear the retrocausality language source code for yourselves. So there's multiple lines in the first song that mentions the word see, which morphed into an archetype for spiritual sight. So basically what the retrocausality language changes, it changes certain lyrics from having a regular human definition to having a much higher meaning. So like, for example, there's another part of the song that mentions the word eyes, which lost its human meaning and took on a higher meaning about how Source uses us as its eyes. And yes, Source can see through our eyes, just like Source is aware of every thought we think, every sound we hear. We're not separated. The word one in the lyrics got decoded as a metaphor for Source. See, it all depends on whether your consciousness is merged with the lower collective consciousness, which is actually where the majority of the population is at, or whether you're merged with the higher collective consciousness. So if you're in the red, which is the lower collective consciousness part of the chart, if that's where your emotional frequency is at, then to you, the word one in the lyrics simply just means a person that's alone. But if we can focus on God's unconditional love and raise our emotional frequency to match the higher collective consciousness in the blue and yellow, then the word one instantly changes into a metaphor for Source and how we aren't separated from Source. And the same thing can be said about all these transmissions. It's only when we're able to rise above the lower collective consciousness mindset that we're able to actually hear the retrocausality language on a conscious level. I mean, yes, our subconscious mind always hears it, but we want to be able to have the conscious mind hear the retrocausality language too. So like with these songs I'm going to play, they mention the words breath and air, which changed it to an archetype for Source's life force and unconditional love. And this life force goes way beyond something that just keeps the physical body alive. It's an unconditional love that's beyond words. That's what in that non-duality clip that I just played, that's what he was talking about when he was talking about how the me wants to know everything, right? But what this love is just, you can't know it with like words and thoughts. It can only be like felt and experienced. Sometimes you'll hear people refer to it as Christ consciousness. Like there's been times when I've used that term in my other videos, but I don't use it in a religious way. It's like a state of bliss or ecstasy, peace beyond understanding. Sometimes there's a joy element to it too. And it's more than just emotions. It's like an altered state of consciousness. It's kind of like being high on a really good drug. And I know that sounds bad, but that's the only analogy I can come up with. So just to go back to the chart, when you're so high that you're in the yellow, aka the higher collective consciousness, New Earth, from that elevated state of consciousness, it becomes self-evident that the words breath and air really mean Source life force that expands one's consciousness to a state of being able to experience this indescribable ecstasy. Lifing life. And it's undeniable at that point because you're experiencing it. Now, before you get to that level, you might find yourself in the blue, which is like an intermediate point in the higher collective consciousness. It's kind of like where you're starting to hear the retrocausality language, but you haven't quite gotten to the point to where you become fully intoxicated with this unconditional love. Like there's still some duality there, but your mind has definitely outgrown some of the lower collective consciousness definitions of the lyrics. So I call the blue part of the chart the escape key meaning level, but it's still a part of the higher collective consciousness. That's where it becomes clear. Like, say you're in the blue, right? In the blue, the song lyrics that mention the word breath and air. In the blue, it's like it's talking about how source keeps the body alive. And that air that keeps the body alive is actually a form of the life force. But there's so much more to that life force. Like this life force, it's just, the life force powers more than just what we call the physical body. It literally expands our consciousness in a way that I could never fully explain with words. But again, if your mind's focused on the lower collective consciousness paradigms, then breath and air, all that is just invisible dead molecules that have nothing to do with source. There's nothing special about it. But yet, oddly enough, somehow we all need it to live or we die within a few minutes. But it's got nothing to do with source though, right? See, that right there, that's the hypnosis. We've been under hypnosis for most of our lives, and it goes back generations, the hypnosis. It's crazy. But when we hear a song mention the words breath, air, breathe, breathing, just know it's talking about source life force expanding our consciousness in a way that allows us to experience unconditional love, peace beyond any understanding. You could say the unconditional love itself is the life force. It's the breath of source, i.e. the breath of life. And I keep calling it an altered state of consciousness, but really it's not a state. It's the experiential realization of what we are. It feels like the ultimate love affair when you're in it, but not with a person though. But real quick, the word name in one of the songs changed into a reference for the essence of what we really are, which is actually something that's beyond words, which kind of sounds like a paradox because the songs are telling us about the essence of what we are through words. But keep in mind, the retrocausality language can use archetypes and metaphors as tools to point to that which is beyond words, if that makes sense. The word in the lyrics stood out as instructions telling us to go within our heart to find our God center instead of focusing on the stuff that distracts us away from our connection with source. And the last thing I want to decode is the song line that mentions the word choice. Choice changed into instructions letting us know that the time has come to choose between love or fear. And really the choice has already been made, but from this limited human perspective, it appears as though the choice hasn't been made yet. Like from the perspective of the conscious mind, we have to choose between love and fear. And keep in mind, fear includes all other forms of low frequency emotions like hate, desperation, apathy. It's not just about choosing to be afraid of something or not. Ultimately, I think it comes down to choosing whether we live our lives focusing our awareness on the lower collective consciousness or the higher collective consciousness. And even if you can't physically get away from a certain person or situation, we always have a choice. We can always make the choice to mentally and spiritually separate our focus from it. Okay, so I'm done decoding. Now, remember these source code definitions when I play these 3 songs. And really, all songs you hear from this point forward, meaning if you hear a song on the radio mention breath or air or any of these other words I just talked about, the same retrocausality definitions can still apply. Now, granted, a lot of times two people will hear the same song and get two different messages, but that's because everyone's spiritual journey is unique. All I'm saying is these source code definitions that we just went over is a good place to start. So remember these higher definitions as you're listening to the lyrics, and you can't tell me they don't sync up most of the time with other songs too. And what you'll find is the lyrics actually will start to make more sense once you apply the higher meanings to the words. But I did capitalize some of the words in these songs just to emphasize some of the retrocausality language transmissions. Now keep in mind too, none of these artists claim to be affiliated with any religion. These songs I'm going to play are just regular songs you'd hear on the radio, but when we listen from the perspective of our subconscious mind, it's easy to hear the deeper messages. It becomes very clear that no song we've ever heard was ever talking about human romantic relationships. They were always talking about the original love affair with Source. But take these next few minutes, I would say, and just really calm your mind and really focus on this unbounded, infinite love. A love that's so powerful, there's nothing it can't do. It can even use a song to get your attention. But just make sure you're staying present throughout the entire song and really focus on your connection with Source during all three of these songs. Just take a break from all the distractions and all the overthinking and just focus on love. And really ask yourself, God, if you could send me a message or a sign through this song, what would you want to tell me about?
I've been driving for an hour, just talking to the rain. You say I've been driving you crazy, and it's keeping you away. So just give me one good reason. Tell me why I I can feel the magic floating in the air. Being with you gets me that way. I watch the sunlight dance across your face, and I've never been this swept away. All my thoughts just seem to settle on the breeze when I'm lying wrapped up in your arms. The whole world just fades away, and the only thing I hear is the beating of your heart. And I can feel you breathe, it's washing over me, and suddenly I'm melting into you. There's nothing left to prove, baby, all we need is just to be caught up in the touch, slow and steady rush. Baby, isn't that the way that love's supposed to be? I can feel you breathe. As all the walls come tumbling down, closer than I've ever felt before. And I know, and you know, there's no need for words right now. And I can feel you breathe, washing over me, and suddenly I'm melting into you. There's nothing left to prove, baby, all we need is just to be caught up in the touch, the slow and steady rush. And baby, isn't that the way that love's supposed to be? I can feel you breathe. Just breathe. Caught up in the touch, the slow and steady rush. And baby, isn't that the way that love's supposed to be? I can feel you breathe. Just breathe. I can feel the magic floating in the air. Being with you gets me that